Hey everybody, it is You Had to Ask, the show where I answer your questions, and this week my first question comes from Zippity Floppity Zoop Bop, please suck my pudding pop. And by the way, congratulations for sneaking a Bill Cosby joke into the first minute of the video. Anyway, here's the question. Yo, Mr. Shives, I need some help. Dude, I am an atheist, 12th grade high school. My cousin moved to the US from Greece and she goes to high school with me in my grade. Her family is Hellenic polytheists, so they believe in Zeus and the gods of the 12 Olympians. There are still people who believe this today. We are taking a class together, Greek mythology, LOL. She was offended on the attitude the teacher and students had about Greek gods. I even find it offensive. Some fuckface Christian in class found out about her religious beliefs and made a comment, who the hell still believes in Zeus? She's a retarded cunt. I punched him in the throat and that dipshit deserved it. Is it really fair to say Christians, Muslims, etc. to be respected as a proper, credible religion, but Hellenism or other Greek religions are just silly fairy tales? It's not fair to make that distinction to say, well, you know, modern religions are religions and deserve to be treated with deep respect, but the Greek mythologies are just mythologies and silly fairy tales. That's not fair. I think the way to resolve this is, at least in school, in an educational surrounding, all religions, whether they are practiced widely today or they have largely gone out of fashion like Hellenic mythology, they should all be treated as mythologies. Sometimes you hear things like, you know, well, why are superheroes so popular with people today? Or what about, you know, why do so many people love science fiction or high fantasy or whatever? And invariably someone will say, well, it's because people crave mythology and we live in a world today where there is no mythology. No, we have plenty of mythology. It's just that when mythology is in fashion, it's not called mythology, it's called religion. We have tons of mythology that we live with every day that shape our lives and our attitudes in ways we don't even realize, but we don't think of it as mythology. We think of it as religion. Or in some cases, perhaps we think of it as history, which is a problem unto itself. But no, the derision and the scorn and the dismissive attitude, the mockery shown to your cousin's religion by the guy who you throat punched, which I can't approve of, by the way. You shouldn't be punching people, but I'm sure you know that. It's because he draws an imaginary line between Christianity and her religion, when in fact there is no line. His Christianity and her polytheism are exactly the same thing. It's just that her religion has largely fallen out of fashion and his religion is still practiced by millions and millions of people. That's the only difference. And in an educational setting, that difference doesn't mean anything. If you're studying religion, whether it's a religion practiced today or a religion that hasn't really been practiced for hundreds or thousands of years, doesn't matter. They should all be treated as mythologies, as far as I'm concerned, in the classroom. Ahoy Yerno! About growing up. I learned in the last few years, especially after having a child, that growing up is an illusion. At heart, I'm still a child. I see this at work. Most adults are big children, and I see this in my parents, who still act like big children. People don't seem to outgrow their childish attitudes. There's just a thin veneer of responsibility. What do you think? What makes you an adult? I mean, you're wearing a 10-year-old Superman shirt, a Batman watch, and make a weekly about pro wrestling. Your wife will be wearing Batman lingerie tonight, or a Harley Quinn corset, I'm guessing. Are you an adult? And what does that word mean to you? Yeah, I'm an adult because society tells me I'm an adult. I'm an adult because I have certain adult responsibilities that I have either sought and accepted voluntarily or had imposed upon me because of my social situation, because of my age, and so forth. So I'm an adult because I fit the parameters of the social construct that we have created that tells us what an adult is. But you're right. I do have a Batman watch. I'm not wearing a Superman shirt at the moment, remarkably enough. But yeah, I am in many ways a big kid. And it's funny. I was just talking with my wife about this today, about situations where adults act like children. There's a Facebook page for our town where people get into petty little arguments, and they act like children on a playground, where if if one person starts to attack somebody, everybody else will pile on, and it's sort of like, well, if one person did it, then it's okay for the rest of us to do it. They behave just like schoolyard bullies. And I mean, the internet is full of that kind of behavior. Look at how adults, grown people, often with jobs, often with families even, behave when they're on YouTube pages, when they're leaving comments on YouTube videos or Facebook posts or web forums. They behave abysmally. They behave like really poorly behaved children. So yeah, there really is no difference. And I mean, it's not all bad. It's good to be able to say, you know, I can get in touch with my inner child. I can still have a childlike wonder about things. I can still get excited or get happy or have that kind of optimism that is often attributed to children. I mean, it's a good thing. It can be a good thing. It doesn't always have to be a bad thing. And I'm not saying you were saying it was a bad thing, but my examples were all of bad things. But yeah, it's a social construct, and in a sense, many of us never really do grow up. And I think lots of us are grateful for that. The parts of me that have not yet grown up, for the most part, there are some parts of me that I think need to grow up still quite a bit. But for the most part, the aspects of me and my personality that are still somewhat childlike are parts about myself that I really treasure and that I wouldn't want to lose. Winford Lee, hey Steve, I gotta ask, does it ever bother you that people who are opponents of same-sex couples always seem to focus on the sexual side of the relationships and not the more emotional sides? It's almost as if they seem to think that a relationship is only really measured by sex and not love or compassion, which is obviously total horseshit. This can even be seen with transgender folk, when bigots like to focus on where they wish to go to the bathroom over anything else in an attempt to seem like less of a piece of shit they actually are. Yeah, it bothers me, but it doesn't surprise me, and in a way I'm kind of grateful for it because it serves to discredit the people that make those arguments. Isn't it interesting how many people who are staunchly opposed to gay rights or trans rights or those sorts of things have this sordid fascination with the sex lives of those people. Sex lives which they claim to find repugnant and disgusting and perverted, and oh, those people, the sick things that they do. And yet they seem to spend an awful lot of time thinking about what those people do in great detail. It's funny, I was on the Thinking Atheist podcast just recently, and one of the clips that Seth Andrews played that we were talking about was of a guy, it was, I think it was actually of Pat Robertson, and then we talked about some other people who had similar thoughts of, well, if they legalize same-sex marriage, then surely bestiality is next. Have you ever heard a gay rights activist, an LGBT activist, say anything about bestiality? Is there even remotely a movement to legalize bestiality in this country? Does it exist as a political entity at all? No. The only people who ever talk about it are the people who are opposed to same-sex marriage, who are just certain in their minds, or at least feel like the people they're talking to, who they want to stir to action, are certain enough in their minds that they'll be afraid of it, that, well, if we let the gay people have equal rights, then it's bestiality next. Nobody's thinking about this but them. And I think that's telling. I think it tells us exactly what sort of people they are, to know that they're the only ones that seem preoccupied with the sex lives of the people that they want to frighten us all of. Rockin' Rob 210. I've got bipolar disorder, and I've been on medications to manage this condition for about 2 years now. One of the problems I've run into since I started taking the medications is that I've lost my creative edge. In case you're wondering, I am a guitarist and I compose my own music. I used to be a well of ideas. I had so many of them that I had a hard time keeping up. Now I feel uninspired, and I have not had any new ideas for music for almost 2 years now. What should I do? I'm afraid to change my medications because that could lead to the more erratic manic symptoms that I had when I was off my meds. However, I feel very depressed that I can't write any new music anymore. It's really eating me up from the inside and has been a source of great depression. What should I do? Boy, you are asking the wrong guy. I do not feel qualified to advise you in this at all. I will say I will express my empathy and my sympathy for you, and I will say if anybody watching has had experience with this, please feel free to chime in the comments. Maybe you can help Rocking Rob out. You can offer him some advice from your experience if you've grappled with a similar situation. And also, Rob, if there's anybody you can talk to in a professional setting, if you can talk about it with your doctor, or if you have a therapist that you can bring this up to. I mean, maybe you already have. I assume if you're asking me about it, maybe you've already sought professional help and it hasn't satisfied you, and this is sort of your Hail Mary pass. Let's see what the idiot on YouTube has to say. But I wish I knew what to tell you. I don't have any personal experience managing bipolar disorder with medication and dealing with the side effects of that. I don't know what to tell you, but I would urge you, if you haven't, to seek out professional help, and also to maybe reach out to people who have dealt with a similar experience. And again, anybody watching, if you have anything to say that could help Rock and Rob, please chime in the comments. Chad Campbell. Hi Steve, I just recently watched a couple of your videos and wonder if being an atheist is all about debunking Christianity, or if you have plans to move on to something like Islam or any number of other religions. And maybe you have and I haven't found them yet, because when I say recently, I mean about an hour since I discovered you, and it's past my bedtime. I'm also not trying to provoke you, because I realize you can shred a lazy Sunday morning churchgoer such as myself. Well, I wouldn't want to shred you. I don't like to think of myself as someone who shreds people. I have done videos about Islam here and there in the past. It's not something I talk about a lot, and I'll tell you the main reason why when I discuss religion as an atheist, I talk mostly about Christianity, and why most atheists in the U.S., in Western civilization in general, address themselves to Christianity when they're challenging religion or critiquing religion, is because Christianity is the dominant religion. It's really no more complicated than that, at least from where I sit. Christianity is the dominant religion. It's the religion that is practiced by the majority of people in my country. It's the religion that is practiced by nearly everyone in positions of power in my country, and especially in the government. The elected representatives here in the U.S. are almost entirely Christian, and always have been. So, and it is Christian values and Christian fundamentalism which is attempted repeatedly to be inserted into our laws, which many of us who value secularism and the separation of church and state feel compelled to fight against. There is no real viable political movement in the U.S. to impose Muslim law on people through the force of civil law, despite the fear-mongering that goes on from certain sources. That there's just no realistic possibility that that's going to happen anytime in the near future. But there are very powerful political lobbies that continue to try to impose Christian values on people and force people to live by the rules of Christian churches and abide by Christian doctrines using the force of law, either by having Christian mythology taught as science in public school classes, imposing Christian morality on people through attempts to limit abortions or limit the rights of same-sex couples to marry or adopt children, or all sorts of other things. So Christianity is the most obvious and the most dangerous adversary to an atheist in this country, in this part of the world. So that's why when we talk about religion, we're usually talking about Christianity, because Christianity is the religion that is there, and that in its most extreme, most overbearing form threatens secularism and threatens our liberties. That's why we talk mostly about Christianity. Becca Hawkins. Hi Steve, have you heard of the 1 Minute Apologist on YouTube? He seems to me to be standard in that he tends to preach to the choir. My dad gave me a book by him recently, which he wrote on doubt potentially being a good thing for faith. I only got about 20 pages into it and was immediately annoyed with his fear-mongering about gay and trans people. My question is this: do you think this brand of Christian apologetics will ever die? I think the fear-mongering about gay folks and trans folks will die eventually, just as the fear-mongering about racial minorities eventually died for the most part. There are still, of course, pockets of extreme Christians who preach white supremacy or white nationalism, but they are so extreme that they are shunned by the overwhelming majority of Christians. And in fact, most Christians would not even want to consider those churches to even be Christians. That's how outside of the mainstream that they are. And I think the same thing will happen eventually with gay rights and trans rights. I think eventually apologists, churches, evangelists, whatever, who incorporate transphobia and homophobia into their messages will be pushed to the side as gay equality and trans equality continues to gain acceptance in the mainstream. I think that will inevitably happen. It might take a while. It might take decades before it does happen, but I think eventually that aspect of apologetics and evangelism will disappear, just as the racism did to a large extent once racial equality became more of a norm and the goals of the civil rights movement were embraced more broadly by our culture. I think it'll happen eventually. M. Fru for life. Hey Steve, I'd like your opinion on something. About 2 weeks ago, me and a close friend admitted we both had intimate feelings for one another. We began hanging out, holding hands, things like that. The problem is, she has a boyfriend. He's on the other side of the country right now and won't be back until September. I tried to end it a few nights ago, but yesterday I found myself telling her that I like her too much to just stop like that. She said that I couldn't believe how glad she is I said that. I'm fairly certain she likes her boyfriend more. So my question is, what should I do? Should we end it now before any irreparable damage is done? Should we end it when he returns in September? I really suck at this whole relationship thing, so I would appreciate any outside opinion. I'm 15, and I live in Canada. Well, if you're 15, you can be excused for sucking at the whole relationship thing. I'm 35, and I'm still not great at it. So you're probably, when graded on the curve, you're probably doing better than I would be if I were in your situation. I don't know. I feel like you should probably end it for ethical reasons. If the girl is dating someone else and she doesn't want to break up with him, it's not really right to go out with someone who is in a relationship with someone else behind that other person's back. I don't think that's really cool. It would probably be easier if you did it now as opposed to later. It's gonna suck no matter what, and it's never going to be a good situation for you because you clearly like the girl, and if she doesn't want to break up with her boyfriend to be with you, then I think the only other option is that you and her have to knock it off. And get used to this, because you're only 15. This is going to happen probably a few more times, if you're lucky, before you get to be an adult, and then it'll probably keep happening. Welcome to life. I wish I could tell you something better. I wish you the best. I hope that it works out for you. I think the best thing to do would probably be to break up with her and move on. You're 15, you're probably a quick healer emotionally, romantically. You can move on and find something else. That's what I think you should do. But if you do that and it all completely goes to hell and it ruins your life, you didn't hear it from me. I am Pontius Pilating you. I am washing my hands of the whole thing. Although, if you do it and it turns out to be the right move, and it really makes your life a whole lot better, and it eases this burden for you, then it was completely my idea, and you're welcome. You're also welcome for this. It's time for
the lightning round. Rapid fire questions, glib and adequate answers.
Lucas Hackett, one angry brony. Hey Steve, what would you consider to be the worst TV show you've ever seen in your life and why? For me, it would have to be a tie between Hannah Montana and 19 Kids and Counting. I'd rather watch Family Matters, Married with Children, American Ninja Warrior, Monday Night Raw, or My Little Pony, Friendship is Magic than watch those two shows I've mentioned. What about you? Oh, I don't know. I mean, toward the end, especially Family Matters was pretty bad. There was a show, for some reason, whenever I think of like really shitty TV shows, I always think of this show. It was a sitcom that was on Fox like 8 or 9 years ago, starring, I think, Michael Imperioli, I want to say, called The War at Home. That was fucking terrible. And it was on like for a full season, maybe even 2 seasons. I can't really remember that clearly. And every time I would click through the channels and see it, it was just awful. It wasn't fun. It was pained and just terrible. Fucking terrible. So if I had to pick off the top of my head, I would say The War at Home. But I'm sure if I really dug into it, there would be others. The St. Clair family. Hey, Steve, two-parter here. First, how long and at what net speed was required to upload this 27-minute, 44-second video? Okay, I'll stop there. That video, last week's You Had to Ask, it was uploaded at a speed of 5 megabytes per second is my upload speed, and it took about 20 minutes. B, the Sagan of biology? Really? Yeah, I think so. I think Dawkins would be the Sagan of biology. Who would you nominate? Maybe, who else would be a good nominee for the Sagan of biology? Maybe Stephen Jay Gould? That might be another one. Next, why don't you ever answer my questions? And finally, why do you and Jason avoid revealing your state or locality on the hugely popular SoundCloud podcast, Late Seating? That was just a thing that Jason did when we were doing the Scarface review. He said, I'm not going to reveal what state you're in, even though I revealed what state I live in a bunch of times. I just went along with it when Jason said it, because that was what Jason said. And always affirm. Radical Bacon, would you ever consider embedding an ad into your video for something that you actually value and use, like, say, 8 o'clock coffee? Yeah, maybe. It would depend on the product, and it would depend on how much they were going to pay me. But I wouldn't, write it off absolutely. If it was a good offer and it was a product I didn't mind shilling, yeah, I would consider doing something like that. Jason McGinty, hey Steve, out of all the Christian apologetics authors you've reviewed, who do you think is the most ridiculous? For my money, it's got to be either WLC or Ray Comfort, but I could see a case being made for Corny Van Til also. On the other hand, are any of them really any better than the others? Well, the one I always say that is a little better than the others, to me, in my experience, is C.S. Lewis, because at least he could write, and he could phrase his preposterous arguments to sound very elegant and very easy to understand. So I will give Lewis the edge from the other apologists. But yeah, who's the most ridiculous? It's got to be Ray Comfort as a human being, as in terms of his presentation, in terms of his arguments, how incredibly wrong he is almost every time he tries to explain something. Yeah, it's got to be Ray. Don't you think? Andrew Lawrence, I'd really like to know what your thoughts are on the fact that America and a small African nation, the country formerly known as Burma, are the last in the world to embrace the metric system. Are you embarrassed when your former President George W. Bush says things like, the metric system is silly and illogical, myself and my fellow Americans don't get it? Gerald Ford said America would embrace it back in 1975, and then he got voted out, and nothing has happened for 40 years. Yeah, I'm embarrassed by that. I would be fine if we adopted the metric system. I don't really see a valid reason why we haven't, other than we're just obstinate Americans, and we just don't do things that way. We got our own way of doing things around here. That's really the only thing I can think of. I'm embarrassed when people are able to say former President George W. Bush. I'm embarrassed that actually happened, that's a thing that people can say and be telling the truth. Also, President Jimmy Carter wanted to convert us to solar power almost 40 years ago, and then we elected Ronald Reagan, and that disappeared until just recently too. So, Mechanical Menace, hi Steve, is it bad that I'm not ashamed of liking Ang Lee's Hulk? No, not to me. Maybe to other people, but not to me. I love Ang Lee's Hulk. I think it's a great movie, so you shouldn't be ashamed of it. I'm not ashamed of liking it either. Brad Balmander, hey Steve, who's worse, Dinesh D'Souza or Ray Comfort? Thanks. Between those two, I would have to say Dinesh, even though I just said that Ray might possibly be the most ridiculous apologist. Dinesh D'Souza is someone who decided that it wasn't good enough for him to make a fool of himself fucking up apologetics. He had to make an even bigger fool of himself fucking up politics, which he did, and he actually got in trouble. He was convicted of a federal crime and is now doing community service or living in a halfway house or something because he made some illegal political donations. So, Dinesh wins that one. Fire262, question for next week inspired by your end bit. If your Patreon influx of cash becomes sufficient enough, would you ever soundproof your studio? Or do you consider the outside audio intrusions to be color enhancements, as it were? I would soundproof this motherfucker the moment I could afford it. It's one of my hugest pet peeves. I tolerate them because I really have no choice, but no, I don't consider them color. I don't consider them ambiance. No, I hate it when cars go or trucks go roaring by here and it's audible on the microphone. I hate it. I would screen it out the moment I could. Hey, that's it for the questions. Time for a shout out. The shout out this week goes to the YouTube channel belonging to Kay Zak. And this is sort of a 2-in-1 shout out, and I will admit that it is somewhat self-servingly constructed. Kayla's channel, her own personal YouTube channel, is awesome. I highly recommend it to you. She's a former Christian, a deconvert. She has a really interesting series that she did on a Jehovah's Witnesses book, a Jehovah's Witnesses pamphlet. She goes through it a little bit at a time and reviews it and talks about what it is and what it contains and the claims that it makes. And it's a really, really interesting series. And she just has a really great perspective on things, and I highly recommend her channel to you in its own right. I also would like to bring up the fact that Kayla is going to be the co-host this weekend of a TV show that I'm going to be on. I'm going to be a guest on Road to Reason on Fairfax Cable Access, Public Access TV, Sunday at 3 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. my time. If you are in the Fairfax, Virginia area and you get Fairfax public access television, you can watch me at 3 p.m. on Channel 36 on Road to Reason. And for most of you who are not in the Fairfax area, if you would like to watch me live on this show, I'll be there actually live in Fairfax in studio. It's going to be really awesome. I'm really looking forward to it. They are also simulcasting it on Ustream, and there will be a link to their Ustream page in the description box of this video. So click on their Ustream page Sunday at 3 p.m. if you want to watch me live. And of course then it'll also be uploaded after the fact to their YouTube channel that I have shouted out previously, but it's also linked in the description box, their Road to Reason TV YouTube channel. So check me out this weekend on Road to Reason, live on Fairfax Public Access TV. I'm really looking forward to that. I also want to remind you to check out the Lemme Listen podcasts, created, hosted by the great Jason Harding, Jason with a D. He and I do a movie review podcast. It is only one of the many podcasts that he does in the Lemme Listen family, but I'm partial to late seating because I'm on it, because I love doing it. It's always a highlight of my week when Jason and I do a late seating podcast. And a little bit later today, on Friday, as this video you're watching is published, look for the most recent episode of Late Seating, because we're reviewing the classic silent film Metropolis, and it was a really fun review to record, and it's a great movie to talk about, just an awesome, awesome piece of cinematic history. So go to soundcloud.com/Lemme-listen to listen to that, the most recent episode of Late Seating. You can also listen to Lemme Finish, which is Jason and Finite Atticus, and also his awesome new podcast, American Monsters and How to Destroy Them, which is sort of a cross between This American Life and Welcome to Night Vale with some Coast to Coast AM thrown in, and it's just a really, really funny podcast. So check out all of the Lemme Listen podcasts on SoundCloud.com. That's it for me, everybody. I'm out of here. I'm done. Before I go, though, I want to urge you to leave a comment on this video. Leave a comment asking me your question for next time, because in order for me to do this, you have to ask. So leave a comment asking me a question. You can ask me anything about anything. Nothing is too serious. Nothing is too silly. I will answer as many of your questions next week as I possibly can. So until next time, I'll see you. Take care, everybody.